Hi, everybody. I'm Richard Sher, and it's time to wear off. And what a panel we have. From WBAL Radio, heard weekdays 2 to 6 p.m., the amazing and popular Torrey Snow, the man who put the R in rhetoric, Professor Rick Vatz, one of Baltimore's very successful and in-demand attorneys, Tonya Bana, and welcoming to the team here on Square Off, Andy Frank. Andy, welcome to the program. Tell us just a little bit about who you are and what you're doing.
Sure. Thank you, Richard, and thanks for having me. I'm a fourth generation Baltimorean. Right now, I'm working with CapEx Advisory. We provide consulting to nonprofits that have capital projects. As Richard mentioned, I served as deputy mayor, real estate director, and in the private sector was special advisor to the president of Hopkins, Ron Daniels.
Welcome. That took almost the full half hour. But how about this about face by President Trump, who is now blaming Ukraine for starting the war against Russia? Trump is now fully adopting Russia's false propaganda on Ukraine. Trump claiming on his Truth social network, Zelensky refuses to have elections. He is very low in the ratings in Ukrainian, and the only thing he's good at was playing former President Joe Biden just like a fiddle. Torrey, what do you think about what's going on in this country?
Look, I think that when it comes to geopolitics and international affairs, I've long made the assumption that everybody's lying to me. I'm just figuring out about what, right? And I do get the strong sense that obviously our American sensibilities have rightly put us in a position where we're highly concerned about the obvious aggression of Russia. I don't even know where Trump is getting this idea that Ukraine started this. Yes, there are complicated things going on in the background. But one thing that I know about Donald Trump is that when he is speaking, he's usually working towards some other angle. It's extremely frustrating to try to follow him. It's extremely frustrating to try to justify or even defend. And I'm not going to try to defend the rhetoric, but one thing that I'm fairly confident is that it is absolutely rhetoric. To what end, I don't know.
Tonya, welcome.
Just as an initial matter, I have to take issue with the suggestion that everybody lies because everybody doesn't lie. And this is not normal. It is not the case that all politicians say anything, whether or not they mean it or whether or not it's connected to any values they have or any mission that they have connected with public service. I don't believe that. I think that this particular administration, this particular president, does have a real problem with honesty. It's no surprise to me that he has essentially flip-flopped, America's view of the war in Ukraine, because he clearly is enamored with Vladimir Putin. So this does not come as a surprise.
Rick, what do you think about this? About Trump changing teams?
Well, I'll tell you, you have with Trump a guy who's virtually unpredictable. I mean, he comes into office and he believes in 4 weeks he's going to change everything. And what he ought to do is he ought to go faster than Biden, but slow down a little bit. We have an ally in Ukraine who's battered, and Trump felt this was the propitious moment to say falsely that Ukraine had started the war, that Zelensky is a dictator, and he could turn this around tomorrow and say, he's been a friend of mine for a long time. I think Trump is doing well on things like DOGE and like the migrants, but I don't think he's doing well in foreign policy. I wrote an article in the Baltimore Sun a couple of weeks ago about this, that on foreign policy with respect to China, with respect to Russia, he's got problems. And
Wrap it up.
He's as good on those as he is on some other issues.
Now we hear for the first time on Square Off. Let's welcome Andy Frank. Andy, your turn.
I think sometimes we try to react to Trump's statements using reason or rational thought. I don't think that's possible. Donald Trump relies on disinformation, misinformation, essentially lies, to support his extreme views, while the facts don't support it. I mean, his claim that if he were president, the war would never have happened, and that the war was essentially unnecessary. I think he needs to tell that to the 70,000 Ukrainian families that lost loved ones or those that have been injured during the war, that they died in vain, that they died in vain protecting democracy because he, Donald Trump, of course, you can't prove a negative, but he would say that he could have prevented this from happening, which adds absolutely nothing to the conversation or debate about what should happen next. It strokes his ego, and it doesn't contribute to the rational discussion that needs to occur on what happens next.
Well, Trump continues his attacks against Zelensky, calling him now, he did it during the past week, a dictator without elections. Trump warning Zelensky, you better move fast or he is not going to have a country left. What does that say to you, Torrey?
Look, I think that when we are considering everything that's happened over the past year and a half to 2 years with that entire region, everything has been about driving a public narrative. And keeping that in context, I think that Donald Trump is trying to validate to his base, a significant portion of his base, that that all of this money that has gone to Ukraine, all of these expenditures that have been criticized by folks in the Freedom Caucus and everything, he's basically trying to make them feel better about the position that they took, especially as he tries to reorganize and kind of maneuver the United States into a different, more isolationist position. And so, to me, once again, I'll go back to my point. He's driving a rhetorical point, trying to drive a sense of validation among his base. For those that are rational and thinking about it, it is an immensely frustrating process. And again, where he's headed with it, what his end goals and objectives are, I couldn't even begin to speculate.
Go ahead, Tom. I see you want to talk.
Yeah.
I think it's very concerning that, our world leader is just blatantly lying about something that has no factual support. I mean, if you look at if you actually put in the work to look at the sentiments within the country, I think that the Ukraine's president has a better approval rating than Donald Trump certainly has. And to have elections would require them to roll back martial law, which creates concerns about Russian more Russian aggression. So it's concerning, and the whole kind of justification for our involvement in all of these other areas of the world is to maintain the stability of the world. And I am concerned that that the chaos that we're experiencing in the United States right now is going to have a ripple effect around the world.
Here's the point. President Zelensky countering, quote, unfortunately, President Trump lives in this disinformation space. Meanwhile, Trump's embrace of Russia is worrying some Republican senators, like South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham, who says, quote, when it comes to blame for the Russian invasion of Ukraine, I blame Putin above all others.
Well,
Andy,
that has the advantage of being true. I mean, Ukraine was attacked by Russia. Kiev was attacked by Russia, and so to cozy on up to the person who was attacked, who when Trump cozies up to the Russian leader, this is inexplicable, and he seems to be attracted to strong leaders, irrespective of which side they're on. What's he going to do when China attacks Taiwan? Is that going to be okay with him? This is why, as I said in that article a couple of weeks ago, in foreign policy, he appears to be lacking. And he appears to like to use a bludgeon rather than a scalpel. He likes to excite people and get them angry. And that's no way to use political stagecraft.
All right. Go ahead, Andy.
I think we all remember in 2018 when Putin and Trump had a meeting in Helsinki, and standing beside Putin and the press said, "Do you agree, Mr. President, that the intelligence community has concluded that Russia interfered in our elections?" And he said, "No, Putin told me he didn't do it, and I have no reason not to believe him." Putin knows exactly how to play Trump. He knows how to pander to his ego and what to say. And there's no question. You can see, and Zelensky doesn't do that and wouldn't do that. Trump lied about, he said there were $350 million that have gone to Ukraine. only 180 billion has been appropriated, and of that, less has been spent, and 60 billion of that money is actually spent in America to U.S. companies that are making weapons for the Ukraine conflict.
Let me say one thing about whether rhetoric is causing a problem here. He has, in my opinion, a very responsible Secretary of State. When Rubio goes over there and starts talking about a fair, enduring, and sustainable peace, that's exactly right. So what's going to happen when there's a conflict between the outcome of this and what Rubio stands for and what Trump stands for? Is he going to fire Rubio, the best Secretary of State he could have possibly chosen, in my opinion? I hope not.
You think Rubio will differ from Trump and his public views? He
already has subtly, Andrew, but the question is whether the outcome of this is going to show a difference between Rubio's statements, which are always responsible, Rubio, and Trump's statements, which are always irresponsible.
Then we're going to go to a break.
I would love for someone to do a really extensive, some journalist or a journalistic oriented program to do a really deep dive on Trump's history with Russian oligarchs, because I was just reading a small piece about him, and it revealed that some Russian oligarch bought property from Trump for $90 million in 2008 when Trump was having severe financial problems. And people kind of are dismissive of, people make jokes about Trump being, a Russian asset, but he's primarily motivated by money, and he doesn't care. He doesn't have any public interest concerns whatsoever. He doesn't care about anybody but himself. I suspect that we should just look at what Putin would want to predict what Trump is going to do.
It took just 1 month, but Donald Trump, ladies and gentlemen, has declared himself King of the United States. On his Truth Social, Trump declares, quote, "Long live the king," after he killed the congestions pricing system in New York City. That made him very excited. Torrey, before we break, what do you think about King Donald?
He's a troll, and anyone that sees anything other than Donald Trump being a troll has not been paying attention to this man for the last decade.
We take a quick break. Howard Mallison, the voice of Square Off. Please support our sponsors. They bring this to you. Go ahead, Howie.
Thanks, Rich. Richard and I are proud to represent the law firm of Barry Glazer. Barry always goes that extra mile for his clients, whether it's been a personal injury, medical malpractice, or nursing home neglect. Barry and his staff, that includes an in-house doctor and nurse, make no apologies for getting top dollar from the insurance companies. His clients are his best advertising. So if you need a lawyer, give Barry Glazer a call at 410-547-8568. Yep. Barry Glazer gets results.
Sure does.
And Baltimore is a great diner town, and the Double T Diners are always voted #1 in reader polls. TT stands for totally terrific. For breakfast, lunch, or dinner, you can't beat the enormous menu selections that bring you back again and again. There's Double T locations on Route 40 West, Perry Hall, White Marsh, Bel Air, Laurel, Annapolis, Pasadena, and the EC Diner in Ellicott City. Plus, drive by the docks in Middle River for their Monday night lobster special. All part of the Double T family. Tell them Square Off sent you.
Absolutely. Get the Square Off lobster. It's shaped like a square. All right. Here's some new polls just released at the end of this past week. President Trump's approval numbers, according to them, are declining. CNN says Trump is liked 47% to 52% who do not, negative. Gallup, 45 plus, 52 minus. Washington Post, 43 plus, 48 minus. And Elon Musk is also underwater. What do you have to say about that? Anybody who wants it? Go to Andy.
Those poll numbers will fluctuate up and down. In fact, there are polls suggesting that Jimmy Carter was at 69% when he started his term. So I think what's most important is the poll in 2 years. The midterm elections between now and then is when Democrats and others need to organize and expose this president and his supporters as frauds. And that's the most important approval rating that we need to focus on.
I-
sorry. Good.
I've written a number of articles about polls and how they fluctuate and what they mean and what they don't mean and how sustainable they are and how they're not sustainable. And I doubt that anybody should be worried about this. But Trump takes a rise in polls as meaning that he's doing a great job. And what it means is that he's had one major success so far, and that is the migrants. And that appears to be manifestly successful. He had the advantage of following a president who is utterly irresponsible with respect to the border. And you should always hope that your predecessor is a terrible president when you're president, because that will help you for a while. But if inflation continues and if the economic problems continue, that will seep away from his popularity in the polls and generally.
Yeah.
Right. I'm just don't believe the hype. I mean, this is a president who will lie about anything and believes marketing is fact, or what people perceive to be fact is more important than reality. They were publicizing their deportation numbers until they realized that their numbers were below Biden's numbers at the same time period, and then they stopped doing it. So, is it successful because people have the perception that, Black and brown people are suffering and being thrown out of the country? Yes, that campaign has been immensely successful. But in terms of actually getting, people with criminal records who are a threat to American citizens out of the country, I don't know that the numbers actually bear out that he's doing any better job than Joe Biden.
Go, Tor.
Yeah, I think the question was about the poll numbers, and I'll just say that Donald Trump not only won the Electoral College, but won the popular vote. So, I mean, again, the fact that, obviously, as people have mentioned, the poll numbers are going to fluctuate. It would be very, very dangerous for Democrats to presume that current still isn't flowing deep in this country.
It's also that he got under 50%, and it's not a landslide. It wasn't a mandate. If you look at the election, you look at the numbers, it's one of the closer elections in the last 50 years. But of course, the Trump machine wants to present it as a mandate.
And 90 million people stayed home. 90 million people stayed home. So the vast majority of people did not vote for Donald Trump, and his margin is slim. The mandate rhetoric is not supported by the facts.
I didn't say that. I just said he won a popular vote in the Electoral College. So.
Just making sure that the audience understands that,
Okay.
winning the popular vote doesn't mean anything in the greater context of 2 decades of people getting better results than this guy.
So as we know, in his first month in the White House, President Trump has taken a wrecking ball, reining in the Department of Education to reducing the federal workforce and overall budget by hundreds of billions of dollars. But this from the Baltimore Sun, quote, "It's meant the end of federal support for transgender rights and diversity programs, birthright citizenship, and efforts to address climate change." Maryland Republican Representative Andy Harris saying, quote, "President Trump was elected by the American people, as Torrey pointed out, to decrease the fraud, the waste, and abuse in the federal government, and that's exactly what he is doing."
Well,
I think
let me
if
say
he
a
would
couple things about the Department of Education. The Department of Education is loathed by conservatives and loved by liberals. It was started by Jimmy Carter, and a lot of people think that it is critical for things like Pell Grants and for watching over disabled students and so on. And a lot of people think it's just an organization to maintain the liberal bias within public schools. And I think all those things are true. So I think that it would be better to use a scalpel with the Department of Education, not to eliminate the Department of Education. And so this requires some careful consideration of what you want to do. One of the things that I want to emphasize is that nobody locally and nobody nationally talks about the single problem that makes reading outcomes so low and math outcomes so low, and that is single parent homes. The fact that we have more single parent homes by percentage than we've ever had. And until we start dealing with family as a critical element of this, we're not going to solve any of these problems.
All right, listen, okay, Rick, we've heard that, and we respect that you brought that up here in the middle of this discussion. On Air Force One on
Just
Wednesday,
real quick, Richard, if this was about waste, fraud, and abuse, Trump would not have fired 17 inspectors general whose job it is to root out waste, fraud, and abuse. They're gone. They get up every in the morning, they go to bed at night thinking about it, and they're gone, which is protecting the new secretaries that Trump has put in these departments.
And the
How much
IRS
waste, fraud, and abuse
auditors.
did they find over the past 30 years?
what time?
Well, the thing is, the IRS auditors have made $25 for every dollar that we spend on them. So why would we get rid of those folks? We're only getting rid of those folks because we want to be able to protect rich people who are committing tax fraud.
Look, even the Democrats agreed that the spending has gotten out of control. They agree that there's plenty of things. Chris Van Hollen, everyone has agreed that we need to rein things in. No one's done it for the last 30 years.
Why fire the people who are responsible for doing it every day?
They weren't doing their job.
What are the facts to support that? How do you know
The
they weren't
fact that
doing their
your
job?
very senator, Chris Van Hollen, said that we need to do a better job of spending and waste, fraud, and abuse.
I don't recall
Better
him.
job doesn't mean we're not doing it.
Oh,
All right.
we're finding a lot. Look. I mean, look. We can go there, right? Because we can go there. There has been just the reason that people are freaking out right now is because Elon Musk is going to X and just posting stuff. All he's doing is just telling people what's happening with this money. And the Democrats are losing their minds because he's just telling people what's going on. We were never supposed to know how USAID money was being spent. We were never supposed to know about all of these programs and all of these things that have been wasted. No one else over the past 30, 40, 50 years that has been going on has come close to revealing all the ways that our money has been wasted that even the Democrat leadership acknowledges needs to be done. And what do they always say? Well, we need to make these cuts. We need to do these things, but we got to do it the right way. Well, we've had 30 years to do it and no one's done it.
We are going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to change topics and talk about the increasing fear of flying among American people and also people internationally, because there have been too many accidents, too much bad news about flying. And we'll do that right after Howard.
Thank you, Rich. Dr. Kelly Gagan, our newest sponsor here at Square Off, is a well-respected board-certified podiatrist and heel specialist. And foot problems can happen at any age, and Dr. Gagan knows that the appearance of your feet matter just as much as correcting any problems you may be experiencing. And if unsightly toenails embarrass you to wear sandals or open-toed shoes, you may be a candidate for laser treatments that can solve this issue. They are safe, painless, and go right to the cause. And believe me, over-the-counter treatments don't work. So give Dr. Gagan a call at 410-753-4422 to set up an appointment. Bad drivers are everywhere. That's why auto accidents are on the rise. If you've experienced an accident, the insurance companies cannot tell you where to take your car. This is the reason that more and more drivers are trusting Leading Edge auto body and mechanical repair. Leading Edge works on all makes and models and offers free pickup and delivery anywhere in the Baltimore area. So call 410-443-6433 or visit them at 5807 Falls Road in Mount Washington. Leading Edge makes your car look and run like new again. Back to you, Rich.
That's right. Leading Edge makes your car look like new, and Dr. Kelly Gagan makes your feet, well, I can't say prettier, but she takes good care of them. All right, let's talk about the mid-air collision that took 67 lives over Reagan International Airport in Washington, D.C. Both the jet and the Army Black Hawk chopper falling into the icy waters of the Potomac. Talk about the medevac crash in North Philadelphia. 6 on board, 1 on the ground killed. In the Black Hawk jet crash, 67 lives were lost. A Japan Airlines jet clips a parked Delta plane at Seattle Airport, and there have been more incidents. It's no wonder that research is now suggesting that up to 40% of people throughout the world now have some degree of aerophobia, the fear of flying. Tonya, take off.
Yeah, well, and this is going to get worse, right? When you use a hammer instead of a scalpel, you are going to accidentally fire people who manage, the nuclear arsenal. I mean, this is what happens. Obviously, crashes that are occurring within weeks of President Trump taking office cannot be, I don't believe, legitimately blamed squarely on Donald Trump. But I do think that this is going to be increasingly be a problem because of the nature of the cuts and the lack of appreciation for expertise that this president has exhibited. I think that this will continue to get worse.
Good,
Well,
Andy.
there's no evidence to support any of that. Like literally, we don't even know the cause
But
of any of these crashes. We don't have any evidence to connect any of that. What I will tell you, as someone who's in the press, is that the big thing that's changing is that there's more discussion and coverage of this. I follow air travel extensively. Space and air is kind of my thing, and I'm telling you, concerning things have been happening in our skies for 2 years now, and it started about 2 years ago. And again, it doesn't usually get into the mainstream, but there have been just incidents that have been, and I've even talked about it on my program. Go pull the receipts. I said something strange is going on with air travel. I don't think that we've reached a point to where people should be afraid because, again, statistically, when you look at the data, the odds of people being involved in a tragic, catastrophic incident are still astronomically low. They're happening more frequently than they should, but I see no reason or evidence to suggest that things are going to get worse, and I would not at all be involved in fear mongering, getting people riled up and frustrated about that right
Tanya,
now.
go ahead. You wanted
I
to
think-
say something? 1 second, Andy. Go ahead. Tanya, you were jumping in there.
I just don't know what data Torrey could possibly have to support what hasn't happened yet. So I guess we'll have to check back the
But
next
you
time
were
we
the
get
one that
together
said
to
that you were
see.
the one that said it's going to get worse. So
Yeah, I know. And I don't see how you could have any factual basis to say that's not going to happen. You haven't presented any data to
can't
support
prove a negative. You're
other
an
than
attorney. You
your
know better
receipts
than
that
that.
you talked about having from your show. I don't know that constitutes facts, but
All right.
How
thank
can
you for
you
that.
present data to
You
show
just say
something
not to make
isn't
this
wrong?
personal. She's clearly making it personal, Richard.
No personal stuff.
Feelings hurt.
No personal stuff. Andrew and then Rick.
Right. I'm done.
I flew from
That's
Baltimore
completely
to
inappropriate.
Providence last night, and if I had driven, the odds of me dying in a car accident would have been 190 times greater than flying. It's still the safest way to travel by far. The car crashes are the leading cause of death in the U.S., more than 40,000 a year. So I understand that people are concerned, but people are still getting in their cars every day, even though it's the leading cause of death in the country. I do think there is a political element to me. Of course, the Republicans want to wait before these investigations happen, before they pass judgment. Of course, it was President Trump, after the American Airlines collision in midair, who came out while the bodies were still in the Potomac, concluding that this was because DEI at the FAA, without any evidence. And that's typical of his approach to everything. If it were fair, then we would point out that he fired the FAA administrator without naming a replacement. If it were fair, we'd say that he implemented a hiring freeze. If it were fair, he'd say he disbanded the Aviation Security Committee. He fired the TSA director. And then what happened? The first crash of a commercial jet in 17 years. Is it fair to blame Trump? You know that if the situation were reversed, they would blame the Democrats in a second.
Let me just say a couple of things. The fact that Democrats would blame Trump Trump would blame the Democrats if the situation were reversed isn't really relevant to the truth on this. But let me just say why people are so afraid of a plane crash. It's because they fantasize in a plane crash, there's no escape. An accident equals death. Whereas they feel that with other accidents, with other modes of travel, that there's always a good chance that they'll be the ones who don't have it or are not in the accident themselves. But when you fantasize a plane crash, you fantasize that equals death. And I think that's why people are so afraid. But on the other hand, there are 30 to 40,000 deaths in cars every year. And your odds of going throughout your entire life without a death in your family are about 1 in 100. So, I mean, the fact is that it's much more dangerous to drive cars, but the fantasy of an airplane death is very salient when you think if you're in an airplane crash, you will die.
Thank you, Rick. Torrey.
What's that?
No, I thought you had something you want to do.
Nope, I have nothing to say.
Well, I just want to say that any personal stuff doesn't play on square off, which
Yeah,
is
but I don't tolerate mockery, right? And I have worked really hard. That was extremely disrespectful. What
Oh my
happened, and
God.
yeah,
Fragility? Really?
yeah.
what time
It's
did you?
I don't even know who you are.
tell you,
I
grow up.
I don't know
This
who
is
you
about to
are.
get
I
a
don't know
lot
what your
worse over the
problem
next
is.
4 years. If you can't
Yeah.
take me criticizing you, you better buckle up, sweetheart, because it's about to get a lot worse. It's
Who do
about
you
to get a
think you're
lot
talking
worse.
to? You're not talking to a child
Maybe
here. Sweet
you.
buckle up, sweetheart.
Maybe you.
I don't even know who you are.
Yourself. Get over
All
yourself.
right, guys, that's really, it's unnecessary. Let's deal with opinions. And let me just say, you were talking, flying is statistically safer than motor vehicles, except when you're on a plane. Of course, then you wonder, when an engine starts burning or a flight attendant gets stabbed in the neck by some irate passenger, or some crazy person opens a door, or people hide in the wheel wells and freeze to death. Anyway, the FAA reports 45,000 commercial and private flights take off every day in the US, carrying about 3 million passengers. Your odds of dying in an air disaster, 1 in 13.7 million, compared to 1 in 95 of dying in a car crash.
But Rich, here's the problem. The problem is when you have a president that does not respect the expertise of experts and people who practice a craft over, the course of decades. You have someone who appoints people based on loyalty rather than expertise. These factors conspire to contribute to incompetence. And that is why I would predict that we're going to see an increase in these kinds of incidents. Yes, air traffic, travel is statistically quite safe. But this president isn't going to really care because he's not flying on commercial planes, and his family isn't. He doesn't care.
That's
I
Expertise did
just
Pete
hope that
Buttigieg bring to the transportation?
What Torrey had, sorry?
So what expertise did Pete Buttigieg bring to this the administration he was overseeing?
I don't know, but
He
you know
was-
what?
he
It wasn't
was-
my job to
You
appoint
don't know
someone
because he
for
didn't
his
have any.
role.
So
he was the
okay.
manager.
It wasn't
I'm
my
just saying
job.
we're pretending
All right,
like this
guys.
is we're
He was-
pretending this is unique to Donald
Can
Trump.
I
It's
answer the
not.
question? He was a manager of a workforce, and he was the mayor of a city, more so than the current secretary.
Yeah, flying an airplane and managing air travel is way more delicate than that. I think, look, here's the thing, right?
Well, there were
We
no
have
commercial
long
crashes
lived
during
in
the
a
Buttigieg years.
situation where
Quiet,
the folks that are
everybody,
in these
Torrey.
secretary positions are often appointed not because of their expertise, but because of their proximity to the president. That has been the pattern. And for us to pretend like all of a sudden in 2025, this is a new trend, like that shows a staggering level of ignorance about how this government works.
Guys, we have run a little bit over.
Okay.
I want to tell you that was an excellent panel, except that one little stuff that went on. And I want to thank Andrew. Andy, good to have you join us. Tonya, Rick Vatz, and Torrey Snow. You must listen to his show on WBAL Monday through Fridays from 2 to 6.
2 to 6.
It's one of the
Best
best
hours
shows
on radio.
for anywhere. And I want to thank those of you in our audience who continue to make the numbers grow. We certainly are not at a loss for topics to discuss. I'm Richard Sher. Join us again next time when once again we square off. Goodbye, everybody. Be safe. Bye-bye.